Rats are gnawing on an arm right next to you. You don't brush them away, not because you don't want to, but because you're too exhausted to care. You can't sleep, you can't leave, and you're starting to realize this isn't hell. This is a World War I trench. In this video, we're taking you back in time, stepping into the first 24 hours of a soldier's life, where every passing minute could be your last. If you enjoy authentic historical journeys like this, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming episodes. But before we begin, ask yourself, if you knew for certain you'd be trapped here, with no way out, would you still dare to step down into the trench? The year is 1916. The Western Front. A line of trenches stretching over 700 kilometers, from the North Sea coast to the Swiss border, cutting across Europe like a massive scar. Why was it so long? Because after the opening months of the war, both sides realized a grim truth. Modern weaponry, machine guns, artillery, barbed wire, had turned every head-on assault into suicide. Neither side had the strength to push the other back, yet neither would accept retreat. So they dug in. Thousands of miles of trenches were created, linked into a continuous defensive system, turning the entire battlefield into an endless living wall. This was no longer a war of maneuver. This was a war of entrapment. Within that system, over 6 million soldiers were pinned in place. On average, about 6,000 men died or were wounded every single day, not in major battles, but simply by existing here. Artillery could rain down at any moment. A sniper only needed a split second. A stray shell could wipe out an entire squad. The army referred to all these deaths with a single word: wastage. No glory, no names, just gaps that needed filling. And that is exactly why you are here. You are a replacement. The man before you is gone. And this system, it had a spot ready for you long before you ever arrived. You don't arrive by day. You arrive under the cover of night. You step into deep, narrow, zigzagging trenches that feel like a labyrinth, where thousands of men live huddled together in mud water and the stench of decay. These paths have names: Piccadilly, Oxford Street, not to remind you of home, but to keep you from getting lost when everything is plunged into darkness and the shelling begins. To your sides are damp earthen walls. Above, only a narrow strip of sky. You can't see the enemy, but they are there just a few hundred yards away. One look over the top, and a bullet could end everything in less than a second. Then a blast echoes. Dirt sprays into your face. Gunfire reverberates through the cramped space. And after just a few steps, you're knee-deep in freezing mud. No one explains. No one looks at you. In that moment, you realize you didn't step into a battle. You stepped into a system designed to make human beings disappear over time. And the most terrifying part is that tomorrow it all happens again, as if you never existed. Your day doesn't start when you wake up. It starts before the sun rises, around 4 a.m. A shout rips through the air. Stand to no questions, no delays. Over 1 million soldiers along the front climb onto the fire step almost simultaneously. Rifles loaded, bayonets fixed, eyes fixed on no man's land. Dawn and dusk are the most vulnerable times for an attack. And if you're the only one not standing there, you'll be the first to die. You just manage to get your feet on the narrow ledge when crack, a dry, sharp sound. The man to your left collapses. No scream, no warning. A sniper saw him before you could even process what was happening. You still have to stand there. Don't duck. Don't run to him. Just stand and stare forward as if nothing happened. The distance is sometimes less than 100 yards. Close enough to hear noises. Close enough for death to arrive before a single thought. 30 minutes pass. Maybe an hour. No one speaks. And suddenly everyone opens fire. Thousands of rifles tear through the mist in unison. Morning hate. No target, no tactic. Just firing. To ensure no one crawled too close during the night, you pull the trigger along with them. You don't know who you're shooting at. You don't know who's shooting back. Afterward, you're issued a rum ration. About 2 ounces. Small. but enough to warm your throat, enough to stop your hands from shaking for a few minutes. You eat cold canned meat, hard-track biscuits so tough you have to break them, tea that tastes like gasoline. You chew fast because you know at any moment something could fall from the sky. And then, as if to prove it, a whistle shrieks. Before you can react, a shell lands behind you. Earth and debris erupt. A man who was sitting and eating just yards away is gone. Not in one piece. You turn away, not because you aren't afraid, but because you aren't allowed to stop. For the rest of the day, you wait. You sleep if you can. But about 1/10 of the men must always stay awake, watching through periscopes, because to lift your head is to die. And while you think you're doing nothing, your body has already begun to collapse from within. You thought you understood what war was. You were wrong. Because most of the things killing you have no face. After less than 12 hours standing in freezing mud, your feet lose all feeling. The skin softens, swells, and turns a sickly corpse-like pale. This isn't a bullet wound. This is trench foot, a condition that can set in after just 10 to 13 hours of continuous exposure to cold and wet. Throughout the war, the British Army recorded over 74,000 cases. In the first winter alone, more than 20,000 soldiers were incapacitated simply because their feet no longer functioned. You don't need to be shot to be taken out of the war. Just standing too long in the mud is enough. But the trenches don't just have mud. They have life. Rats. Legions of them. They don't fear humans because they are used to living among corpses. A single pair of rats can produce hundreds of offspring a year. And in some sectors, soldiers reported killing thousands in a single night without making a dent. They scavenge. They start with the eyes. Then the softest parts. You lie down to rest and feel them scurrying over you. Not one, many. And the scariest part isn't their presence. It's the fact that you're getting used to it. Then come the lice. Nearly 95% of soldiers carried them with an average of about 20 per man. And those were just the official estimates. They lived in every seam of your clothes, sucking your blood every night, leaving your body in a state of constant itch. Soldiers called the act of hunting them, chatting a word that sounds almost harmless, for a repetitive daily chore. They'd run their clothes over a flame and hear the lice crackle like tiny fireworks. But it was almost futile. Lice weren't just an annoyance, they carried trench fever, infecting over 1 million soldiers, each taking months to recover. And then you begin to realize a truth. No one says out loud you aren't killed all at once. You are worn down, bit by bit. This environment doesn't need to be fast. It has time. It will take your strength, your sleep, your senses, until you no longer have the energy to react when death finally arrives. And when night falls, you'll realize what happened during the day was the easy part. You thought you'd get a break. Wrong. As soon as it's dark, you're called up. No explanation, no choice. Out you go. You crawl over the lip of the trench. Don't stand. You cannot stand. If your head pokes up too high, it's over. You slide into the mud, your body pressed against the cold earth. Ahead lies no man's land. No light, no clear sound. But you know, someone is watching. You crawl. Slow. Very slow. Then the sky explodes with light. A flare. White. Blinding. You freeze. Don't breathe. Don't blink. If you move, even an inch, a gunman 100 yards away will pull the trigger. The light holds you for a few seconds. That feel like a minute. Then it dies. You're still alive. You keep crawling. Your hand touches something soft. Not dirt, not mud. You know what it is, but you don't look. You don't have time to look. You pull your hand away and keep moving. Then a whistling sound. Not a rifle bullet. Different. Heavier. Only one thought flashes artillery. You dive into the nearest shell hole. A second later, the ground behind you erupts. Dirt, rocks, and shrapnel fly overhead. If you had been half a second slower, you wouldn't be in one piece. You lie still in the crater, heart hammering, ears ringing. You hear nothing for a few seconds. Then the gunfire returns as if it never stopped. You think you've made it, but you're wrong. A shadow appears ahead. Close, too close. No time to raise your rifle. You and the other man see each other at the same time. No one screams, no one speaks. You lunge. Your hand grips what you brought, not a gun. A strike, a dull thud. The other man goes down. Or maybe it's you if you're a beat too slow. No time to check. You turn back. Crawl, slide, fall. The mud pulls at you. Another flare goes up. You lie still again. This time, it's closer. You feel someone's gaze sweeping over you. You don't move. You don't dare breathe. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Then the light fades, and you realize you're still alive. But not because you're better, not because you're stronger, only because this time, death chose someone else. And as you crawl back into the trench, you start to understand one thing. Here, survival isn't a victory. It's just a delay. You just got back, soaked, hands shaking. You think you can breathe for a few minutes. Wrong. A low, deep, prolonged sound tears through the air. Not like a gun, not like anything you've ever heard. The man next to you manages to scream one word down. You dive. A second later, the ground erupts. Not one shell, many. In rapid succession, you see nothing. Only earth, stone, wood, and metal flying everywhere. Every minute, as many as 50 to 60 shells can rain down on an area like this. You can't run. You can't counterattack. You can only lie there and hope the next one doesn't land on you. An explosion hits closer. The pressure squeezes the air out of your lungs. Your ears ring. You open your mouth, but hear nothing but the vibration in your head. If that shell had been off by just a few yards, you'd be gone. The shelling stops. Abruptly, silence. Too silent. You lift your head a fraction, and you see it. A low greenish-gray mist drifting toward the trench. Not fast, not loud. Almost gentle. Someone screams gas. You scramble for your mask. Hands shaking, the straps tangle. You don't get it on in time. You take a breath, a mistake. Your throat burns, like it's being ripped from the inside. You get the mask on, but it's partially too late. You start to cough. Not a normal cough. You cough so hard you can't draw air. A man beside you falls. He's still conscious, but he can't inhale. In a few hours, his lungs will fill with fluid, dying, as if drowning in water. You think that's all? But it's not. You only need to slip up for a second. A man next to you pokes his head over the parapet just to look. A dry crack echoes. He falls right beside you. No time to scream. No time to react. A sniper hundreds of yards away just ended his life. All for a look that lasted less than a second. You don't dare look up anymore. You don't dare move. You lie there amidst the mud, the corpses, the smell of smoke and chemicals. And at this point, you aren't thinking about survival anymore. You're just waiting to see when it's your turn. And if your body can still endure it all, your mind will be the thing that breaks first. You survive, physically at least. You're still breathing. You can still walk. You haven't lost an arm or a leg, but something isn't working the way it used to. You start to shake uncontrollably, even when there are no explosions. You flinch at the slightest sound. You stare into space and see things that are no longer there. They call it shell shock, but that name is too light for what is happening inside your head. Over 250,000 soldiers fell into this state. Some were treated, some were given electric shocks, and many never came back the same. The war ends, the guns go silent, but that doesn't mean it stops. Over 8 million dead, but millions more carry the war back home, in their sleep, in their memories, in sudden moments where they can no longer tell the present from the past. They call them the lost generation. Not because they vanished, but because a part of them was left in those trenches forever. And the most terrifying part is that piece can never be reclaimed. So if you were standing there, in the darkness, knee-deep in mud surrounded by men who were disappearing day by day, what would you do? Would you hold your ground? Or find a way out knowing the consequences? And here is what few people mention, just a few months after the days you just experienced. The Battle of the Somme of 1916 would begin. On the morning of July 1st alone, over 19,000 British soldiers were killed before the sun was high. A total of over 57,000 casualties in just the first 24 hours, a number so vast an entire city could vanish in a single day. If you want to see what really happened on that bloodiest of days, don't forget to subscribe, because this journey still has even grimmer truths waiting ahead.